Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with Sam, the main man, Sam, and we've got Kev joining us very soon for your Tuesday night fans forum. I always think there's not much to talk about, but as always, there's always stuff to talk about in the Villa circle, the Villa sphere as it is at the moment. So we'll get straight into it. Sam, I don't want to keep you too long. It was 4 minutes last time. How are you doing, mate?
I'm good, matey. I'm good. I'm just enjoying the new intro. Actually, I like that little bit with Jhon McGinn and Unai Emery having a little cuddle. I like it, man. I'm here for the new season.
Yes. Well, that is courtesy of Nick. He does the intros. He does a great job. Sends me a new one every month or so. So keeps it fresh, keeps it updated. We've got loads in the chat already. I will try and get as many comments as I can read. Make sure you hit the like button, though, people. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Get involved in the chat as well. Any questions you want to ask, anything you want to raise. We've got a few talking points, as I said today. Obviously, Douglas Luiz and the swap deal. We're going to talk that. We're going to talk Nassif Sawiris' comments about PSR and the potential legal challenge. And we're going to talk premium seating and pricing and all that and everything else in between. So, yeah, get your comments flying in. Get your questions in for us, and we'll obviously answer as many as we can. So, Sam, Douglas Luiz, the talk has been for the last 2 or 3 weeks about him, and it hasn't gone away. And now we've had various players linked. Weston McKennie, we've had Chiesa, we've had Sule, we've had Illing Jr. now, all obviously linked to this Douglas Luiz valuation. First of all, what do you think about the situation of us potentially selling him and this swap deal and potentially getting players in?
Yeah, I think it's one of those. It's never ideal as a football club and as a team. You always want to retain your best players and supplement, add to it, rather than give them away. But I think we've seen in the past with like Jack Grealish going that sometimes you cut off the arm to save the body. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those, and I think Weston McKennie's a player that seems to be very heavily linked, and the Lang Jr. I'll be honest, I have only ever seen Weston McKennie play for Leeds, and he was super underwhelming.
Yes,
and I have never heard of Elan Jr. until we were linked with him. So I can't make a massive assumption on the players. What I will say is that I have every faith in Monchi and Unai Emery that they'll only bring players into the club that they're keen on and they think they can work with. But I think, obviously, I'm in an ideal world, you'd love to see Dougie stay. But that being said, if due to PSR rules and compliance, we have to get rid of one of our more valuable players, for me, he's very close to the top of the list for that. A, because he's probably worth the most, or thereabouts. And B, I think he's less integral than, say, an Emi Martinez or an Ollie Watkins last season. And I just don't think we have that many players in the squad who are worth significant amounts of money. So, yeah, it's obviously gutting, but if it has to be anyone, then I think Dougie is a player that is probably more replaceable than the other two.
Yeah, I mean, when Kev jumps on, we'll get his opinion on it before we kind of talk about the logistics of the deal, what it means for PSR and all that kind of stuff. But I do tend to agree with you, and I know we have our kind of WhatsApp group, and we were obviously talking in that, and I do think that in the situation that we're in, I think regardless of a PSR situation, I think it's about time as an Aston Villa fan base that we do sell players. I mean, you could talk about the players coming in is a separate issue, but in terms of selling players for high value when they become when they become a saleable asset, and utilising that to strengthen the squad or whatever it is. I think we have to get used to that. Like, there's been times where we haven't made money on any players. You know, Matty Target, yeah, fair enough. We sold him for 15 million to bloody Newcastle, and yes, we sold Chukwuemeka for 20 million. But apart from Jack, we keep talking about that 100 million. We never sell anyone for like anything decent, any decent sum of money. And then, so when you look at clubs like Man City, you look at clubs like Chelsea, you look at other clubs, they'll sell players for high value and then just keep that cycle going and keep replacing players. Yes, it's sad, and yes, it's a disappointment to potentially lose someone like Douglas Luiz. But if it has to happen for the club to continue moving forward, then it has to happen. And I've always felt, in terms of Luiz, I really like him as a player. I really think that he's got so much ability, he's got so much skill. He can really take a game but the problem is, it's a lot of times it's when he wants to. And I know we get so frustrated about him, you and I, about that situation with him, because I still think there's something more in there that he hasn't always produced, he hasn't always given. And I can see it when Emery gets annoyed with him at certain times, because he has the ability to really control a game, really take a game by the scruff of the neck. And sometimes he's too casual, sometimes he doesn't want to do it. So in essence, that point that I'm making about, and that you made about a big player that we could potentially do without and carry on without, I think Douglas Luiz is that person.
Yeah, I think he's sort of flattered to deceive for the first couple of years. Like, Dougie wasn't great for a period of time, and he was one of those players I always said he's like got all the ability in the world, but when it comes to actually performing in a match at the start of his Villa career, he was a little bit suspect. I think he used to shy away from challenges, which obviously now he's a lot better at. I always used to find when at the start of his Villa career, he used to like hide behind other players, so like he couldn't receive the ball. But I mean, we've got, you know, I think we're fair to criticize him, but I think at the same time you need to give sort of credit where it's due. Like, Dougie's been pretty brilliant for the past 12 months, 2 years. I think he
wouldn't be getting clubs like Juventus and Arsenal and that interested in him if he wasn't doing well. So we have to acknowledge that.
I might be biased, you know. I might be biased, but I don't really see the step up to Juventus. Like, obviously, as a club.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree with you. Yeah. Like, I agree with you. But I mean, willing to spend the money or whatever.
No. Yeah, of course. I mean, they're not really willing to spend the money. They're trying to get rid of players that they don't want.
Yeah, true.
But I think that for me, like, it's a very peculiar move for him. I mean, look, if you're going to swap Turin for Birmingham, fine. I'm not going to question it. You know, as a football club, in terms of how competitive they are in Serie A and the issues that they've had, and they've had a lot of reputational damage over the last, 10 years. Like, they've been done for cheating. They were a big part of that Super League thing. Like, Juventus's reputation as a football club is their stock is as low as it's ever been since I've been a football fan. And I grew up with watching Italian football in the 80s when it was on Channel 4. Like, I actually liked Italian football before I was into the Premier League.
Italia.
Yeah. And like, so before I was a Villa fan, I was an AC Milan fan, and sort of, you know, I loved that generation of Italian football when I was, you know, a tiny kid before I really knew what was going on. So I do get the lure of the, of the Italian league. But for Dougie, it seems like a strange one to push through. And I'm not sure he will push through. I think there's an element as well of maybe the club saying to him, like, look, you kind of have to go because we need to balance the books. And I think that frustration will come onto it later. But that frustration from the owners and from the club is starting to sort of seep out. I really don't think they want Dougie to go. And I'm not sure how much he wants to go. Because obviously he's leaving Alicia behind as well. I don't know how big women's football is in Italy, but I'm sure it's not as big as it is in.
I think Juve might have a decent women's side. I think.
I always see like PSG and the Spanish teams, and
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I don't really see, but I mean, the reality is, look, if we've got to get rid of Dougie, then we have to. And I think we were talking about replaceability earlier. I think, and I said this in our group chat earlier, I think we already have the replacement. I think Tielemans is the natural replacement for Dougie Luiz. I thought he was absolutely brilliant once he sort of like found his feet at Villa this season, and that last part where he got injured. I don't know where it was, at Chelsea. He got injured, and we sort of fell away after he got injured. So I think, I think Tielemans is more than capable of picking up the mantle. And I don't think there's a lot that Dougie can do that Tielemans can't. So, like you said earlier, it's obviously worst case scenario for us to not be building around our best players and losing them. But if we have to lose one, I'm confident that Tielemans can step into that role, similar age, similar levels of ability. And one of the big problems we saw last year was our squad depth with all the injuries. So you bring more players into the fold and sort of pad it out. I think what you'll have is maybe a less exceptional player in one position, but you'll have a better balance around the squad. And that's what we did when we sold Jack Grealish, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Before I bring Kev in for his opinion, great to have you in, Kev. Carl Bates with the super chat. Thank you very, very much, mate. He says, I'm okay with losing Luiz, but not a fan of McKennie, and he's valued at 25 million. Monchi is getting cooked by the old lady, but Illing Jr. is good. So, bit of a mixed bag there. We do have Gaetano in as well, Juventus fan. Good evening, guys. Let us know your thoughts, mate, on... here we are. I don't understand why you guys don't like McKennie. He is a good player. You haven't got a player like him, so interesting.
I know that's because all of our players are good. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
We'll get there.
I think an answer to that is no one's really keen on him because the only exposure that we've had to Weston McKennie is his time at Leeds, and he was pretty shit. So I think that there is method to the madness. We don't just dislike him outright, and like no one's ever seen Illing Jr. play, but I've still seen like his YouTube highlights reel, which include him winning a free kick from like 50 yards away from goal. So we're excited about players, just ones that we don't know anything about.
Yeah. Well, Kev, you actually in our group said Luiz is, you're really gutted to be potentially losing him, and you are obviously of the opinion that he's up there with our best player, even as our best player. So, what are your thoughts on the whole deal first?
Well, first of all, hello everybody.
Hello, mate.
Good to be back. Been a couple of pods I've missed.
Yes.
So. Listen, I'll be pragmatic about the outcome because I trust Monchi and I trust Emery ultimately. So if they want to sell Martinez and Watkins and bring in Steve Bruce and Gary Pallister to replace him, then I'll think, let's go for it. But you kind of get
even at this ripe old age. I reckon Pallister could still shift, I think.
Yeah, I think Bruce would just fill the goal, wouldn't he? So it'd be perfect. So I'm not fat shaming on the pod. Sorry, I'm joking. So look, Luiz, I think if you had to say to me who's our most talented player, I think it's Luiz. I genuinely think it is. And I think last season up until Christmas time, up until his mate Booba, his midfield mate Booba got injured, I think he was, for me, our standout best player in the team in terms of his performances, the way he was dictating games. There are frustrations with Luiz at times. I think Sam's made some valid points. I don't know if he said it tonight so far, but he certainly said it in our pod chat about the fact he maybe holds onto the ball too long and Tielemans can do everything he does. Interestingly, it feels like Tielemans has been around since the Second World War, and actually he's not even a year. He's just under a year older than Luiz, and you feel like Tielemans he's been playing for so long. He's been playing professional football for over 10 years. You feel like he's probably in his early 30s, and Tielemans is 22, and it's not at all. So there's a similar age there. So I feel like it would be sad to see Luiz go because I think he's our best player. But I did say on a previous pod a few months back that if one of our big hitters was to go, I think the question you posed, Richard, was which one would I take? And I said out of a Martinez, maybe a Konza, a Watkins, etc. A Bailey now, amazingly saying that. I think Luiz is the one I would sacrifice because I think that we've got enough replacements in the team. In terms of the potential ins, I think McKennie's a cracking player. I'm not one of the ones that think... I've seen him play for the USA, and I think he's been fantastic. There was a game I saw him play for the USA when him and Tyler Adams were just literally like second coming of Didier Deschamps. And
was that the
Rodri.
first game in the World Cup last year?
I mean, they played well in that game, but
Yeah.
I've seen them a few times now. I know. Look, Leeds obviously weren't great that season; they went down, but it's not easy sometimes. Villa nearly got relegated with Grealish in the team, with Luiz in the team, with Mings in the team. Look at that same group of players now, and I look at this manager and think that he took a team of players that were on the edge of relegation and took them to where they are now with only a few additions. If they think that McKennie is good, and I think he's a good player, and does McKennie plus Barkley, is that greater than Luiz? I think it probably is. If you've got Tielemans fit, if you've got Kamara fit.
Yeah, well, me and Martin talked about this last week. Kev, it'd be good to have your and Sam's as well opinion in a second. But if it was now, when we can talk about the potential structure of the deal, so we've got 20 million on the table, potentially McKennie, and potentially Iling Jr. as well. I think the whole deal would equate to us valuing Douglas Luiz at between 50 and 60 million pounds. So that goes on the balance sheet apparently as that's the value that we can offset against PSR, regardless of the trade-off with players. So if then that 20 million can go into utilising that for getting another player in, let's say it's a Conor Gallagher, for example, Kev, then you've got a Gallagher, McKennie, Tielemans, Kamara, McGinn, Ramsey, Rodgers. Would you be happy with that as a midfield?
I still want the Conor Gallagher type player.
And you went, so you're saying you get a Conor Gallagher, you go in for him, Gallagher type player. You've got Weston McKennie, you've got, Ross Barkley, you've got McGinn, you've got Tielemans, you've got Ramsey, you've got Rodgers. I might have missed someone. And we've got Kamara as well.
Yeah, I think I would. We've been crying out for another defensive midfielder, which McKennie is. Look, can I just say just another point, because I'm seeing a few comments coming in as well. There are so many examples of football players that have not been great at first and have turned out to be really good. A lot of players from, I always say, overseas leagues, come to clubs and therefore aren't brilliant straight away. I remember Diego Forlan getting absolutely laughed out of town in his first season at Man United, and then a few years later, he's one of the top strikers in the world, absolutely bossing the World Cup. So, come on.
I knew you'd like that one.
So, look, we have to judge what we saw. He wasn't great for Leeds at times, but I don't think he was that terrible. But do you know what? When you play with better players, you play better at football. So, but the thing I think is, with all this information coming out now about how the deal can be shown on the books as 50 million, if you sell Duran for 40 million, then actually that massively, massively helps us out. And like you just said, Rich, have we replaced him? And do we have enough in terms of all the fronts we want to fight on with those players? I think if you get in whether it's a Goncalves, a Gallagher, I'm not saying they're the same player, by the way. Alex Boyner, you get someone else in, then I'll be happy. I think if it was as it is now, it's McKennie and Barkley, then I don't think I'd be happy with that going into a Champions League. But I think I'd want someone else.
Yeah. Shout out to Carl again for his super chat. Amazing stuff. Thank you very much, mate. Does this solve the PSR problems? And a few people have commented, and I've just said there, I think it potentially does in a lot of ways, but obviously we can do with helping that even further. Or do we need to sell more players? Well, I think we will end up selling more players. Villa should go after João Gomez from Wolves to replace Luiz and not Gallagher, which is a pretty decent shout as well. But
good player.
Sam, I also forgot to mention Emi Buendia, who's coming back to fitness as well in that, more attacking midfield option. So how would you feel about, I guess, let's say hypothetically, we did get a Conor Gallagher in or another decent, good midfielder in, along with those that I've listed. How would you feel about that in terms of replacement for Douglas Luiz?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to consider that we're doing everything under the restriction of PSR. If you'd asked me this if there was no financial constraints on what we can do, I would say I would like someone else in who is a level above. For example, if you take Emi Buendia, Jacob Ramsey, Morgan Rodgers, Ross Barkley, Weston McKennie, I think these are players that you could argue might not hit the heights that they need to hit in the Champions League for Villa to be competitive. I think you need a level above, not in every position, but you need especially someone in the midfield. You take someone like Jhon McGinn, who's a fantastic player, and the Premier League suits him really well because it's his type of game, that high energy, that hustle and bustle, that sort of bordering on rough, not what he used to be, but you need to be able to get stuck in. It really suits his game. But when he goes to Italy, or if he plays against the Spanish team, how is he going to get on? Like, obviously we saw Olympiacos, that continental football, that low block. You need someone who can open up defenses and do like surgery type passes to unlock defenses. And I don't know if any of the names that we have there, possibly Emi Buendia, are the people to do it. And I think I was a bit baffled for all of last season when people kept saying, "Oh, we're missing Buendia, man. Like, this is why we're missing Buendia." And I was like, well, I love Buendia as well. Don't get me wrong. I think he's brilliant, but I'm not going to pin my hopes on us sort of finishing better in the league or in the Champions League if Emi Buendia is there or not there. I'd be surprised if he starts any game with the squad that we've got at the moment. So I think for me, I'm very happy that Unai Emery has demonstrated he doesn't need super high profile talented players to get a tune out of his team. That for me is a saving grace. But I think if we're trying to progress and we want to again challenge for top 6 next year, and we want to really make a go of it in the Champions League and in the domestic cups as well, I just feel like I would like to see someone with something else a little bit different to Conor Gallagher, maybe like an Eze as a cam, or something that is not achievable for us at the moment. But I think with what we have and what our options are, I mean, I think the club are doing the best they can do, and you really can't ask for any more than that.
Yeah, no, I do tend to agree with you. But I do think, and we've said this loads, Kev, throughout the second half of last season, that yes, maybe Buendia doesn't start every game, but just the option to have Buendia, Mings, Ramsey, and now Kamara. I know it won't be right at the start of the season, but just to have those 4 players back involved in the squad and to be options and to be competition for other players will be huge without signing any new players.
Yeah, absolutely correct. It's going to be sad to see Luiz go, because the other thing I'm going to say to Luiz is he's been there from the start, hasn't he? When we came to the Premier League, he was that the guy we got from Man City, and remember there was all that talk a couple of years back. Are they going to invoke the buyback clause?
Yes,
particularly when he started
playing really well again. Yeah,
because obviously he wasn't great at first, and he looked a bit raw. And I would say another thing as well, like, if you look at what a lot of people are saying about a lot of players, how many people have been giving Douglas Luiz crap over the years and said he wasn't good enough?
Me included.
There you go. Yeah. Weston McKennie's 23 years old. He's 3 years younger than Douglas Luiz. And if you go back a couple of years, it was like, if we'd been linked with a player like Luiz and he's crap, isn't he? He's crap. And it's just, I think it's easier to cast people to the wolves at times. Now, if Weston McKennie turns out to be rubbish by Christmas, then I'll happily change my tune like I did with Mr. Leon Bailey. But, he's a player that plays for Juventus. And I don't think you can be crap if you play for Juventus. And if he plays in a certain system, and Sam touched on this really well, again, if it's not the star players that you've got around Emery, and he's done this a hell of a lot in his management career, he's taken players that maybe aren't seen as being absolutely like unbelievable world stars, and he's got a system, he's got a team ethic, a team spirit. I don't know if anyone's listened to the podcast, not as good as ours, but the high performance one with Ollie Watkins. Talking, if you haven't seen it, or Villa fans, check it out. It's nice to see Ollie getting the kind of plaudits out there. But he just talks about Emery and like how meticulous he is and the detail and the work. And I just think anyone that's half decent, that's got the right kind of attitude for this manager, if they've got a bit of ability, he will get the absolute best out of them. He's a dream. He's a dream for a player to join this manager. And I think that, I don't even know who this Ealing Jr. is. I've seen a couple of clips where he looks absolutely rapid.
Yeah, I said that earlier. I was like, I've never heard of him. And I think just to qualify one thing on Weston McKennie, I don't have any prejudgment of him joining. Like, again, I've already said if Monchi and Unai Emery think it's a deal that'll work, I will stand by it, and I'm excited for it. But I think just when the viewer asks the question, like, why are people objecting to Weston McKennie? The objective answer is because maybe they've seen him play before and he wasn't very good. But I agree with Kev. I mean, like, time changes every player. You get players who start off really good and then get worse, and vice versa. And I didn't know he was 23, and I think it's a really valid point. But do you boys think maybe, I don't know if I'm the only one who feels like this, but do you feel like although we do need to supplement that midfield, there's no talk of us sort of like filling in the other positions that we need? Like, I don't see any talk about right back apart from losing Matty Cash. I don't hear a lot about. I heard Alex Moreno might be off today.
Well, yeah. Well, that was the question I was going to raise about Ealing Jr. Is apparently he can play left wing back. He can play left back as well. He can play obviously left further forward. And I was wondering, off the back of Moreno being linked to going back to Real Betis, whether Ealing Jr. is an option at left back as well as further forward on the left. I'd be interested to know whether that's an option that Emery's thinking about, because he's always wanted players who can be adaptable and play in multiple positions. But like I said, I don't know. I know he's an England under-20 international, but I don't know anything else too much about him.
There could be an interesting system, but I've seen this in the comments. By the way, just goes to show how much my brain's fried from playing football early, because he's 25, not 23. I did the maths right.
Oh, there you go.
You cost all of our credibility.
We're not going to get into all the views have just dropped now.
Yeah.
25, normally my maths is pretty good. 1998 August. I don't know what. Do you know what it was? I think
he's nearly 26, isn't he?
Stop this! He's 23. No, he's 25.
He's 26 next month. Oh
yeah.
This is like that famous Talk Sport one where he's on about Anthony Emmy or something. He's 20.
Like having what's the name? Annie Aluko on.
Anthony, I'm not. My maths isn't as bad as that. Anthony Amy he's finished. He's not finished. He's finished.
He's 28.
Chris Kamara, is it, Jeff? Is he? I mean, no.
We've already done that when Rich did it from the pub.
Oh, Rich, that was absolute mare. That was.
I still think the point stands, right, that he's a young man at 25, right? So, but yeah, listen, I think we have to say, because we can talk about this all day. Let's see what happens. If he comes in, we support him. He's a better player. If he ends up being crap, then he's crap. And he ends up being brilliant. He's brilliant. Ealing Jr., the point is interesting, Rich. I've seen this talk of, like, will the system change? Will he be a marauding, like, wing back? With Emery, who knows? The one thing I do think will probably happen, because this will be his second pre-season now, is I'm sure there will still be more things that we'll want to do. You know, there was a lot of things about Villa last season that we loved, and then if everyone remembers that's was it the Monday Night Football where they showed all the stats, and it was just amazing to see where Villa were in terms of some of the stats. You know, there's so many stats at the back end of last season. Martinez had the most time on the ball than any player in the Premier League. Villa were one of the worst teams in terms of, inverted commas, for pressing. Is that going to need to change, you know, as we go into the Champions League? So
teams definitely found us out a little bit more as the season went on. So there might be an element of trying to change up a little bit depending on who we're playing against.
Yeah, I think so. And I wouldn't be surprised if Emery's got up his sleeve something interesting like that, because there was all the talk was in the last year that Torres was going to play that sort of hybrid role that Cons has been playing, obviously, last season, but clearly with the injury to Mings, it kind of changed it somewhat. But you know, maybe we see that. Maybe we see, as we've been crying out for another right back. Maybe we see an attacking right back coming in. You know, maybe the Duran to Chelsea and Luiz deal being 50 million as well means we get a Frimpong in. We can dream, can't we? Be more like a Walker Peters, but wouldn't it? But
we've got a little bit of breaking news now. I don't know. Lots of people talk about sources in the chat, and HP is usually the best source. But yeah, this one is coming in now from Guillermo Arango. And it's just saying that agreement between Chelsea and Aston Villa for the signing of Jhon Duran, it would arrive for a figure close to 50 million euros. They are negotiating the terms with the player to sign the contract. So, Sam, Jhon Duran, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think at 20 years old, he's shown he's an incredibly talented player. I think he's going to go on to be an even better player than he is now. I I'm not keen to see him go. I know that he's a bit of a maverick, and John McGinn said he's hard to play with or sort of have in the squad. But the thing I love about Duran is that he brings an air of unpredictability to the way we play, especially when we're losing a game. You bring on Jhon Duran and he plays like this is his time to shine, and he doesn't care what the score is, and he just wants to make an impact. And some of the goals that he scored, those 2 goals against Liverpool at his age, you talk about 20 years old, when Jacob Ramsey was 21, Jack Grealish was 21, like they weren't making the impact at the same level that Jhon Duran has this year. And especially I think it's worth noting that he didn't play a lot. Like his stats in terms of like goals per minute and stuff like that, significantly better than someone like Ivan Toney last year. So, he's big, he's strong. I'm not surprised that people are interested in him. The only thing I can think is, well, unless you get, I've heard Broja might be coming the other way, but you have to replace him. You can't leave Ollie. I think one of the big problems for Ollie Watkins last year was that he burnt out. And as good a player as he is, you cannot let him play every game. Erling Haaland doesn't play every game. The best players in the world have seldom played every single game of the season. So Ollie Watkins is no better than Haaland. If Haaland needs to take a break and have a rest in cup games and in European games where they don't need him, then so can Ollie Watkins. So you need to bring in a suitable replacement. And I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame because when Jhon Duran came from the MLS, I had zero expectations of him, but I like the cut of his jib. I like his presence.
I like the arrogance. Yeah,
I like the arrogance.
Yeah.
I like the fact that he's got an absolute, you talk about like Hitzelsberger, like that hammer foot, that left foot. His is one of the best I've seen in a Villa shirt. So yeah, I'm disappointed, but I wish him well. I don't think he was really given the opportunity that he deserved this year. So if he wants to go, then fair play. We can't argue with it.
Yeah. Kev, Des Houdini says, if Duran goes, then a new striker coming in is a guarantee. Sam's already indicated there we must get a striker in. Are you seeing Broja? Are you seeing Tammy Abraham vibes? I know I did a video on that last week. What are you think? Or En-Nesyri from Sevilla? Who are you thinking?
Well, I absolutely agree. If Duran goes, we're going to need it because all you need is a Watkins. Even if he was out for a few weeks, he'd be absolutely done, wouldn't you? I do worry about Duran, whether with the Wild Boys of London, would he come undone potentially in the? Sorry, too many Duran jokes there. Sorry, so you didn't even notice it, did you? Went straight over your heads. 50 million.
I was too busy looking at the comments.
Yeah, 50 million quid for Jhon Duran. I'll drive him there myself. And that's not because I don't think he's an incredibly talented player. I don't think his attitude fits in with what Emery wants, from by all accounts. And that John McGinn interview was telling, really was, to basically call him out like that. So you take it. Well, you've got to bring someone in. En-Nesyri all day long. I'd take that. Broja, no thanks.
Kev, can I interrogate you on that point a little bit? Because
the Duran jokes or the
no. I that's way too old for me. It's a different generation. I see a lot of people talking about like Jhon Duran and his attitude, and I heard the same about Tielemans. Do you remember when Tielemans joined him? Was like, his attitude is bad, this and that. Like, what? And this might sound a little bit confrontational, and it's not. But what do you know about his attitude? Like where? Because the reason I ask is because it never translates on the pitch. He never throws his arms up. He doesn't he makes silly challenges, but he always gives 100%. His attitude is never bad on the pitch. So where does this come from that he's got a bad attitude?
Okay. We to be fair, we've actually had this discussion on a pod a few months back, and I actually would have probably said, you know what, Sam, I agree with it, but it was that John McGinn interview where it was clearly veiled comments he was saying to basically say that he's you can't really trust him. You don't know where. Is that what
John McGinn said? Because I watched that interview and he said he's a hard man to have in the squad. He's probably like Balotelli. He's maybe immature. Maybe he's maybe
he said he was a bit of a nightmare, didn't he?
He's a little bit crazy. Maybe he goes too hard in training. Maybe he screams and shouts, but I don't think that's indicative of his attitude. I just think it's harsh to tar the player with that brush. Like, for example, when Leon Bailey's dad was coming out and saying, "Oh, this and that,"
Leon Bailey's dad's come out.
Yeah, well, he came out with all of that.
Exclusive Villa Park podcast news.
Well, to be fair, the only thing
I would say on that, Sam, is like sometimes like his attitude that might fit with some clubs and some teams. Like, I don't mind that, but Emery might not be all about that. You know, there's been arguments about Southgate with certain players. He doesn't like the way that they are in terms of their attitude. Allegedly,
maybe their personality,
Madison, but it doesn't mean that he's a bad person.
Maybe his personality isn't a good fit, but I think his attitude since he's been here, I think every single time he gets on the pitch, he sort of gives 100%. Like, you've got to remember as well, he's a 20-year-old Colombian boy away from his family in a strange place with people who don't really speak the same language as him. Like,
get the violins out.
No, it's not because if you're going to judge him, then you've got to consider. You've got to put it into context. So I think that whenever Jhon Duran has come on, like even when he was getting those bursts of yellow cards and like every challenge was really like he was still. You've always said this, Rich. Like people need to put themselves about. People need to you be passionate, and especially from a South American as well. That kind of that flair, that temper, that passion. Like that's what you associate with South American footballers. And look, if he leaves for 50 million. Then he leaves for 50 million. I'm sure we can replace him, but I just feel like, I would hate for him to go and then people to be like, oh yeah, well, John McGinn said he had a terrible attitude, because I think in truth we have no idea what he's like as a person. I don't think that's what John McGinn said.
I would say there's no smoke with that fire, and there's been a number of comments that have come out from a few sources about Emery's been upset with his let's call it attitude. Now, you probably could be making a really valid point, and maybe what some might see as bad attitude, others might see as mercurial, talent. Have there been many players? Actually, I heard an interesting comment recently about how the Liverpool academy coach has said, like, basically the kids that he wants to kind of move forward with are the ones that generally get annoyed and get a bit peed off, and the ones that kind of almost take it a bit too easy, the ones that you don't think have got it. So I like someone to have a bit of an edge, and I will say that there's been times with Jhon Duran where he's been absolutely fantastic this last season. He scored some key goals. He really did. I wouldn't say you can trust him still. I don't think you can still trust him to lead the line in games, and I do think for the even if it's rumoured potential, whatever, not fitting in with maybe he's a good lad, South American flair, but doesn't fit in with what Emery wants in terms of a system. To double your money, got him for 19, 20 million.
No, I don't mind that at all. I think you're absolutely right. Like if he doesn't bed into the culture of the club, then that's absolutely fine. I think the only thing I was playing devil's advocate, but I'm conscious of the character assassinations and just just to put it into context. But like I say, for the money that he's going for the amount that he played last year, I think it's.
Well, that's it. Some clubs must see. If Chelsea are willing to put that in or whatever, some people must see that
context as well, right, Rich?
Yeah,
Chelsea are willing to spend 50 million on him and he played a handful of games, like in total minutes last year. Then but I do agree with you. If he doesn't gel in, and if John McGinn's saying like, oh, he's hard to have around, then maybe it's
my two pence is, like, I think again, some of the times when he's come on, I think sometimes we haven't used him enough, and he's been there. We could have used him a little bit more. My couple of things that I thought was, and again, it could be youthful exuberance, and I remember saying it on a podcast when he was kind of intimating that he should be playing more and getting annoyed at not playing and stuff. Yeah, we understand that. We understand that you want to play in that, but there's a time to be a little bit more patient and stuff with regard to you're at a Premier League club in Aston Villa that were doing really well. You've got Ollie Watkins to learn from. You've got Unai Emery to learn from. Just wait your time. And then obviously his agent and whoever's behind him, or whether it's him, have been flirting with Chelsea, his agent's been obviously pushing him out to other clubs and saying this and doing this, because this has never gone away for the whole season. This Chelsea thing has never, ever gone away. So people can do what they want, right? It's fine. We'll make the money on him and whatever, but it doesn't mean that we have to kind of be like, lording over him and everything like that, because he's obviously not. no player is going to love the club as much as the fans do, but to be hawking yourself out to other clubs and liking their tweets and all that stuff as the season's going on is a little bit kind of off the wall.
Here's a question, final question on this, and in the chat as well. Yes or no? To you, Rich and Kev. Should he have played more? Yes or no? This in the last season. Do you think he should have
definitely played more?
Kev?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm convinced. I don't think as many times I thought, wow.
That's not a yes or no. Well done. Hold on. I'll give you 2 options there.
you did, and you were the one who asked the question. So no, I don't think he should have played more. I don't think there was many times I was screaming for him to make a change. Particularly when I was screaming for Timo Robertson to come on way more than I was for Duran to come on. I think Watkins generally performed, other than the back end of the season when he obviously, after that Arsenal chip, didn't score again. But I don't think I thought, oh my God, we need Duran to stay with us. You could probably argue at times he should have. His stats were brilliant, to be fair. His stats are brilliant, and he's got a rocket of a shot, and he's a maverick. And I do think there's a good chance he will go on to be a bit of a world beater. But right now, if he wants, I think is he going to go to Chelsea and play more? Is he going to get what he wants? I don't know if he is. This is the thing. I find one second. Let him finish his point. I find strange about this with the Carney Chukwuemeka as well. He's played the same amount of games both seasons at Chelsea. He played for Villa the season before. If you're going to go because you want to play more football, that's on. If you're going to go because you want to get paid more money and live in a bit more of a party city, okay, fair enough, I get it. But I don't think he's going to be playing more at Chelsea than he would do at Villa. I can't see it. They've got Nkunku, they've got Jackson still. I'm sure they'll probably bring some other players in. I don't know how. I would have thought they would have been relegated to the National League with the amount of money they spent the last 2 years, but something's going on here.
Fair enough. Shall we move on?
Yeah, just a few comments, just to go through some. So, Jurista said, Duran has lots of potential and physical abilities. He shoots some rockets. We'll be sad if we sell him, but if the rumours are true that he wants to go, then 50 million is great value. James on X says, as much as we may love the chaos that Duran brings, that's just not Unai's style. He's all about control. Rub said there's also tactical awareness and discipline, which is very important for Emery and not yet, in brackets, for Duran. Kevin said 42 million is unbelievable for Duran and solves PSR. Michael said, hello all, sorry to be late. No worries. I'm not drunk, but 50 million for Duran.
Euros, Michael, Euros, mate.
You are. And Gary H said, Watkins is the problem for me. He doesn't like competition. Well, he's going to have to get used to it because we definitely need more strikers. So we will see. We'll see how that develops, and we'll see what we potentially get in. Sam, are you still with us? You are off. Your camera's off at the minute, but hopefully you're still with us.
I'm here. I went to grab some sweets. I'm not wearing anything from the waist down. So.
Oh, nice.
I'm joking. Prove it. I'm wearing shorts.
Yeah, good lad.
Wow.
Good lad.
Wow. Are you looking for subscriptions to your OnlyFans, Sam?
Yeah, he's definitely.
OnlyFans subscriptions.
If I thought I'd make any money off it, I'd have been on OnlyFans about a year ago. The amount of money they make. I could have solved the PSR problem by myself.
Maybe that's
what we should do. We should get Mings whilst he was off this year. We should have got him an OnlyFans that and pay for the renovation.
Very, very good point. Yeah, topless photo. Only Sam's brilliant. I love it.
Very good.
He got those boxes from his radiator that were on the.
They're not boxes.
Rich, that was 2 years ago, mate.
All right. Before we move on to the next subject, everyone, please hit the like button. We have on X and on YouTube simultaneously. We have over 350 people watching, which is just amazing stuff. We've gone over 4,100 subscribers. We're on the road to 5K. So please like, please subscribe, and keep your comments coming in. Thank you everyone for your support. If you want a super chat as well, which we've had a couple today, which is amazing, please click the $sign. If you want to join the channel and become a member as well, just $1.99. Please click the join button and you can become an official Villa Park Pod follower. So Nassif Soares doesn't talk very much, but when he does, I think people have to listen. And he's been in the papers today. I think it was the Financial Times reported it. He's not happy with the PSR rules, Sam, and has basically said, very critical about how it's operating now. And it does says they don't make sense. They're not good for football. And says some of the rules have actually resulted in cementing the status quo more than creating upward mobility and fluidity in the sport. Also says managing a sports team has become more like being a treasurer or a bean counter rather than looking at what your team needs. What are your thoughts on this whole thing with Nassif and making his comments about profit and sustainability?
Yeah, I might be biased, but I completely agree with him. Actually, I think there's talk of him or Villa as a club bringing an action against the Premier League for anti-competition, which is sort of within my wheelhouse, an area of law that I'm sort of take a lot of interest in. And I think he has a really, really valid point. I think it's worth saying as well, there's no other industry in this country where so many regulations are in place to keep businesses from spending money or investing money into their business or even going out of business. I saw a quote the other day from someone saying Arsenal have massively advocated for these rules, which have held them back for the last 20 years because they have had to temper their spending after moving to the Emirates. And for me, it's just it's such a bonkers argument to make because fine, Arsenal might have stunted their own growth by sort of maintaining their top four status, but and not really challenging for the league in the last couple of decades. But what they've done is they've preserved and said, well, fine, even if we're not competing at the top of the league, more often than not, we're going to be in the top four, and we're cementing that position there. The rules are designed to make sure that those in power in football stay in power. A lot of people have issue or take issue with what Man City or the route Man City have taken to become as competitive and dominant as they are or they have been in world football. But my argument to that is always the same. To tell me any other way that they could have done it. Is there a better route to become more competitive in football than spending money? The reason that teams like Liverpool and Man United and Chelsea and Arsenal are the most successful clubs in this country is because there has been a period of time where they were able to invest significantly more than anyone else around them. And the argument is now a team like Aston Villa who have owners who have sizable amounts of funds, who are trying to increase our level and make us more competitive, not just in English football, but in world football. They are unable to do so, even if as owners they say, well, look, we're comfortable with making a loss on this for a few years, because eventually what you do is you do what Man City do, is you pump a shit ton of money in, but eventually you become profitable and you write off that investment. Like any business, you invest at the start and then you start making your money back later on down the line. But the problem is that you're not allowed to do that. And it's not just Villa. You look at any other club, you look at a Burnley, you look at a Leicester, who were so unable to build on their success of winning the Premier League and getting into the Champions League that they are now in serious financial difficulty. And they dropped down to the Championship, and they were punished for their success because they weren't allowed to build on it. They tried to, within the rules, they were trying to remain competitive, and they weren't allowed to. The rules are wrong. I think a better way around it would not be unlimited spending for everyone, but to give clubs a period of time where you say, well, look, you can push the button on a 5-year period where you are comfortable with making a loss. And I think the important thing to finally say about Villa is currently a debt-free club. We do not owe any money. Whereas teams like Spurs and Man United, they have over £600-700 million worth of debt. A lot of their owners will put money into the club and then charge it back to themselves or put it in as debt. Villa don't have any debt, yet we're not allowed to spend a fraction of the amount that Spurs are, even though they have all that. And I think that is the problem. And I don't see Villa being able to remain competitive if we're having to sell players like Dougie Luiz, we're having to sell bright sparks like Jhon Duran just to stay compliant with these rules that don't benefit anyone apart from those who are already at the top of the league.
Yeah, before I come to you, Kev, loads of comments coming in about this. Obviously, it's a hot button topic at the moment. But Rachel said, issue is if we get rid of PSR, Manchester City and Newcastle would become the closed shop. Stephen says, why is it Chelsea can spend what they like, but we have to sell a player to avoid punishment? Ant says, best owners we ever have, and we can't spend. Most success we've had for years, and we cannot build on it. Imagine if Real Madrid were told they couldn't buy. Geordie Villain said, only workable alternative is a salary and transfer cap, which will destroy the Prem if enacted unilaterally, so will never happen. Out of the Trash says, having financial rules not tied to inflation is incompetence. Not fixing it when we present the opportunity is both ridiculous and clearly purposeful. I hope we take legal action. Illegal rules, in my opinion. And Gary said, why have the money if you can't spend it? It should be for teams who haven't and are getting into debt. What do you think about it all, Kev?
Well, I think Gary's point's bang on. I think that ultimately, if you want to spend money in any kind of business, you should be allowed to spend it. There is a difference, though, with Man City in terms of Villa. You know, I think the two things are clearly linked in that Man City is not necessarily all about breaches of FFP, isn't it, in terms of spending within the limits allowed to spend. A lot of their charges relate to not giving details around, obviously, how much they were paying players, how much they were paying managers, not providing information about revenue, not complying with Premier League rules, not basically complying with and cooperating with the Premier League inquiries, didn't provide accurate financial information. So there's a lot of things that they weren't doing that other clubs were doing, and other clubs would argue that they were able to play certain players more illegally via the system and pay manager more than others could do, and therefore ergo help them essentially win more trophies. So it's not necessarily around the fact that Man City have happened to time it better than us, and then in recent years haven't timed it better and have just been naughty and spending more than they should, and they're massively in breach. Bit different to what happened with obviously Forest and Everton and other clubs like that. But there is a clear hypocrisy, because even though Man City have done that, I do wonder whether if you looked into Blackburn's dealings in the mid-90s or Man United's in the 90s, I'm not suggesting that Blackburn and Man United did wrong, but I'm saying if you were to meticulously go through what they did to do some of the deals, you might find a bit of dodgy stuff in the books. And if you went back to maybe what Liverpool did in the 80s, and we can keep going with this point. And Chelsea seemed to be the last real one to make a breakthrough, because Sam, you probably less so remember this, but Rich, I remember when Chelsea weren't even a Premier League team, or they weren't even a first division team.
Yeah. I remember them. Yeah. Division 2, Villa playing against Villa, I think, in the late 80s.
I think they came up as champions the season we came up as second. So, we came at the same time. Early years in the Premier League, they were nowhere to be seen. They managed to get, obviously, Abramovich in, spend as much cash as they wanted. And that was the first time we'd really seen that to that level. I know Blackburn obviously brought Sutton and Shearer and Sherwood and Batty and all that. But when they brought in, Good Johnson, Duff, all those different players that they brought in, and they seemed to, basically win the league within immediacy, a couple in a row. But what Man City has done has been, it's not just the fact that they've managed to spend what they want to spend and now we can't. It's the fact that they've just not complied with all of the rules. And does it suit us now that they're suing the Premier League because we are now in a situation where one of our own has pushed back? Maybe it does. And maybe we have to kind of get on board that train. And if Nassef is moving across to where the Man City owners are based, and maybe there's a little bit of kind of cooperation between the two of them. The biggest thing for me is that Newcastle 2 years ago, Villa last year, have broken through the glass ceiling, and both teams have been restricted to what they can do to compete with the teams above us, and it's just not on. And the fact of the matter is, we've got the money to keep Luiz and to buy better players in the squad, and we're having to play the game of selling Luiz. We've got the money to keep Duran. He might be different. He might want to go. So something's got to change. I do think salary cap and all that kind of stuff will be the right thing to do, but it's never going to happen, because it just would ruin the competition. So I don't know.
Although UEFA have this thing where it's 70%, if your outgoings or something like that can't be more than 70% of what you bring in. So they have a kind of a cap. This is why we're getting punished at the moment for being in the Champions League.
Yeah, we are. Yeah,
they have got that. I always think when any authority makes rules or makes proposals to make these rules, I never understand why they never look at what the potential consequences of it could be. They always say, oh, this is going to clean up the game. This is going to do this. This is going to do that. But I would 100% guarantee you that they didn't envisage a situation coming where clubs being forced to sell academy products to then be able to offset that cost for the next 3 years on their books would be in their business plan of their strategy of the plan to move this rule forward, because that just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The Premier League wanted this, was it the FPPP or something that would filter money down to the lower league clubs, from allowing them to sell their academy players and all that kind of stuff from Premier League clubs, and that would help filter the money down. Well, now Premier League clubs are having to sell their academy players to just keep operational and keep going. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. How can you go from a situation of wanting to bring through the best talent in English football or world football, wherever, and then being forced to have to sell that player because you can offset that profit off your club for 3 years to satisfy profit and sustainability rules? That just doesn't make sense to me. So I just have no idea why they don't look at the unintended consequences of enforcing these rules. And then the next thing is the inflation thing. That's like one of our comments says, that's just basic accounting. Like, surely you would set up to move with inflation, and then, both up and down with regards to the economy. It just doesn't make sense to me why you wouldn't do that.
Something's got to change. Something's got to change.
Yeah, 100%. I think the issue that you have is when FFP or PSR now is challenged, what you have is, as we've already said, those at the top and who aren't being threatened with charges and points deductions and stuff like that. There's no incentive for them to allow this, because all it is more competition for them. And you have to remember, it's not just competition as like, we don't want to lose, but we don't want to fall out of the Champions League, the loss of revenue. If you look at someone like Man United and the Glazers, their real only interest is generating money from Man United. They're not custodians of that club. They are vampires of that club who will suck it dry for everything it's worth. But then the other issue you've got is teams like Luton and Southampton and Brentford. They're not going to vote for it either, because Brentford don't want Palace to be able to spend whatever they want, and then broaden that gap between them, because their owners aren't prepared to spend that kind of money. Their owners were like, well, I'm not going to spend the money, but we don't want to get left behind. So you have both ends of the spectrum who don't want to do it. And I think the only thing I would say, you have to ask a question, is you talk about consequences, you talk about everything else. That the genuine question is, we are supposed to be living in a capitalistic society where you have free markets, where people are allowed to join. There's no barriers to entry. There's nothing from stopping you. The American dream, pursuit of happiness, and all that shit. There shouldn't be anything apart from what you're willing to put into it to stop you from getting to the top. I'll put it to anyone out there who thinks the PSR is a good idea. You tell me how, outside of Football Manager, a club like Norwich can become a team that consistently challenges at the upper echelons, or even in the top half of the table in the Premier League, without spending excessive amounts of money. Because if there was another route into it, I'd be all for it. Because no one really likes to see the richest guys win. That's not, it's a good story now, we're one of the richest guys, but if we weren't, we'd be maybe arguing the other way. But my problem is, there's no other way to do it, because
there's one way, mate. There's one way, and that is you've got one of the unique 3 or 4 or 5 managers in the world, fairly semi-unique, who can do it. And that's, unless you're going to get Pep Guardiola who can take over, or Unai Emery. Really, the chance of doing it is 0.00001%.
The evidence that Pep Guardiola could do anything at a team with zero budget has never been tested. So that's not even an argument. And I think
maybe an Unai Emery just takes over a team.
Fine, but even in Unai Emery, the question is, how long can he? I'm not talking about success. Anyone can be successful. Leicester can win the league. I'm talking about sustaining it. I'm talking about having sustained success. And because what you see with these clubs, take Man City again, for example, or forget Man City if they've got too many things under their belt. Take Chelsea, for example. What Chelsea did when Roman Abramovich bought them, and they started off with a sand pitch and players who weren't getting paid. He pumped in a lot of money into that club and made them super competitive. But once he had put that money in, they started to become profitable. He didn't need to do that anymore. He could sell an Arjen Robben for crazy amounts of money. He could sell a Makelele for X amounts of money. He could bring players in earlier in their career who were going to end up being top talents, and he was making money on them. And by the end of it, until Roman Abramovich left, Chelsea were actually profitable. Chelsea were making money. So if you talk about profitability and sustainability, people will argue, well, football clubs are the pillars of their communities. It's very simple. If you as an owner don't want to spend money, that's absolutely fine. But you cannot put it as debt against the club. That's it.
Yeah.
To detach your spending from the books of the club and just say, look, this is what I'm putting and I'm prepared to lose it. It's like gambling. Don't ever gamble anything you're not prepared to lose. And it's the same here. That's the way around profit and sustainability. But what you're talking about really is how do you keep football fair? And the only way to do football is to strip it all back, start doing a draft like the American teams do in the NFL. But that's never going to happen either. So you have to let people spend. You have to
exactly.
open the market.
I agree, Sam. And it's weird because when Abramovich was doing all that, and you mentioned it, Kev, about at first when he was bringing all these players in, the Damien Duff and Michael Essien and Makelele and everyone like that, it was celebrated. It was like, this is amazing. Look at all the players are coming to the Premier League. Look at all the money we've got in the Premier League. It's brilliant. And then every club wanted to be a part of that. Every club was like, oh, when are we going to get a big owner? When are we going to be able to spend this money? And it was almost like celebrated that this money was coming in and all these players were coming. And now it's like, everyone's like scared to say, like, we want to spend money. Everyone's scared to spend any money. It's almost like you got to apologize for being like a rich owner and having some money to spend. It's like, it's ridiculous. Like, we should be celebrating the fact that we've got these owners, and fair play to Newcastle. They should be doing the same thing. And like, what is this attitude about like not wanting to like show that you've got money? And
that's societal, Rich, as well. I think there's a culture at the moment, because I'm obviously not in football and I'm not feeling sorry for any footballers at the moment, but because people are falling on hard times, and you do get, I think just in society, if you are able to spend, like before, if you were going on a nice holiday and you'd whack on Instagram, and like maybe now you'd feel a little bit more sheepish about doing it, because, some people are not able to do that. Some people are having a harder time, and, and that's right in society, but it has no place in football, because football.
Well, that's it, because the football is what gives you some. The football is what gives you some escape from that. You want to see the success from your football team. You want to see them as the ones that are going to be able to break that ceiling, like you said, Kevin, go beyond and bring you some happiness, and be able to spend those money to give your kids and that a bit of a dream. Or, who Villa can get this player. Like, I heard the interview with Leon Bailey, and he's like, I'm an inspiration to kids in Jamaica that you can go out and do this. You can be a big man. You can earn this money and be this. Like, where has that gone? I don't understand it.
We've also had the pleasure of seeing some of the best football teams ever to play in the Premier League. And what I don't understand is why the Premier League would say, well, no, we don't want the best players here. We don't want to be like, the Premier League has cemented itself as the best league in the world. But if you've got, players like Douglas Luiz, who are in the Champions League team in England, being sold to someone like Juventus because Villa can afford to keep him, but if they do keep him, they're not going to be compliant. Like, the best seasons we ever have, whether it's at the top or the bottom, is competition. It's like the closest title races are always the best. That year that Man City got 98 points, 97 points, and Liverpool got 96. This year with Arsenal and Man City pretty much going down to the wire, even relegations, that the closer it is, the better a spectacle it is. So I will never understand it. I don't get what the incentive is. And I think teams like Villa especially, like, we're already feeling it. I think you can see that by the fact that we've not already signed a couple more players that maybe we were expecting before this whole PSR thing came in, but also by the players that are going to leave. And like, I've seen Jacob Ramsey be touted as a player who might have to be sacrificed for FFP. And it's like, he's someone that we've had on our books and we've trained and we've brought through since he was a kid, and his brother was with us, and he's like, his family is part of the club. And do we really want to get to a stage where like players are being sacrificed because people can't afford to keep him? Maybe we are. Maybe Cole Palmer leaving Man City to go to Chelsea and significantly improving Chelsea. Maybe that is the rule, that the goals of the rules. But for me, as a club like Villa, like, I want to see our homegrown talent here, and I don't want to have to sell them because they're a net profit. Like, as a fan,
yeah,
I just
exactly.
don't
You're just seeing a player as a balance, a profit on a balance sheet. Before we move on this, Kev, Sam made a good point there with regards to the level of competition, with regard to the spectacle of the competition. The Premier League are not going to want to have this situation for too many years where no European club goes through too far in the Champions League or the Europa League. Villa were the team that got the furthest in the Conference League to the semi-final. If that happens again for another season, if we can't attract the best players, if we're seeing players going to Italy or Spain or even Portugal or Germany or Holland or whatever, rather than coming to the Premier League, they're going to have to make some adjustments to this rule, aren't they?
They're gonna have to. I think we can say quite safely that Newcastle would have had a good chance of getting out of their group if they'd have been able to buy who they wanted to buy in the summer, because they would have shed boatloads of cash. And there's plenty of other teams in the same boat. You know, if you've got the cash, you want to be able to spend it. But while the rules are there and the laws are there, that's why Man City are in trouble, because they're not adhering to the rules. And if everyone else is adhering to the rules and you're not, then that clearly is an unfair advantage. But the Premier League has been not just the most competitive, but because obviously in recent years it's not been very competitive at all with City, but it's been the most high-profile league, and it's been the most successful league in terms of European leagues, in terms of how far the teams have got. So this year will have been a bit of a shock, I believe. In Aston Villa, as you say, in the Conference League, getting to the semis, being the furthest English team to get anywhere, furthest British team to get anywhere. When you consider in recent years, we've had Champions League winners, we had the Conference League winner the year before, we've had Europa League winners. We've had an all-English Champions League final, all-English Europa League final in recent years. So they're going to want to change that, and whatever that takes. And you would think that would mean they'd be more agreeable to saying, you know what, you can spend a bit more cash if you want. Because the thing is as well, it's like, what's the point in being... Remember we were all cock-a-hoop when we got Randy Lerner initially. Mm-hmm. Then we were all cock-a-hoop when we got Wes and Nassef. It doesn't matter whether you got 50 quid or 500 billion pounds. If you can't spend it, you can't spend it. Don't matter, does it? I mean, right now we're as good as the owners who've got 300 million in terms of what we're allowed to do with it.
Exactly. I mean, money-wise, you're absolutely right. I think the benefit of Nassif and Wes over someone like Randy Lerner is to have a genuine interest in the club, and the club is now perfectly run, very well run. Although a lot of people can talk about like the communication and stuff and some of the things. But here's another thing, and I know we'll touch on it because people are interested in it. Rich, we said this before the show started. Take, for example, the new seats, the cells at Villa Park, going for 1,800 to $2,000. Now, I've seen a lot of Villa fans saying, like, what is this? How are you fleecing the fans? You're doing this and that. One of Villa's biggest problems is their matchday revenue is laughable in comparison to pretty much any London club. But let's just say, take Spurs, for example, someone who's been very close to us neck and neck all season. Their revenue, the amount that they make from home games, are significantly more than Villa Park. So, like, when you talk about Villa investing in, like, the owners investing in the club, what do they always talk about? They talk about generating revenue streams. Let's build a bar where people will come before, spend more time at Villa Park before the games. All they're trying to do is make money, because they're limited to how much money they can make from sponsorship. They're limited to the amount of their own money they can put in. The only way that they can really generate more money is generating revenue from match days. So I think as a fan base, whilst these rules are enforced, we need to sort of decide what we want. Like, do we want to ourselves invest in the club? And I know a lot of people can't spend anywhere near that money on football a year, or do we say to the owners, like, look, we know that we're not able under the rules to compete really in the Champions League, so we'll be happy to finish 7th if we're lucky, maybe 8th, somewhere between 7th and 10th. But I think it's important to note that the reason the ticket prices are going so high, it's not malice, it's not greediness on the owner's side, is they're trying to generate revenue so they can spend on the club, and they just can't do it.
Yeah, this is you segued into it perfectly, because when we have got a situation where the owners can't put more money into to fund transfers or just to fund the revenue situation at the club, and we don't have a huge stadium right now, we're looking to maybe grow it a little bit. This is what happens. You're going to end up trying to create revenue streams, trying to create these premium seats, trying to eke out any extra little bit that you can from the club, from the supporters, sorry. And this is what we're getting. So we've obviously had the terrace view and the lower grounds brought in last season. We've now got this the cells or whatever it is. It's gonna be a strange situation, sitting in a premium seat next to the away fans, getting dogs abuse and maybe a drink at half time. But anyway, and then there's increased costs on the on the boxes, on the corporate sections. But this is where we are, Kev, because as Sam rightly pointed out, what do we want? Do we want the club to say we have to be ambitious? We want to be pushing for top 6, top 4 every season, or do we want to say actually we hit it this season, but due to the rules we can't really push it anymore if you want the prices kept down, so we're going to have to just try and aim for top 10 every season.
Well, tickets will be cheaper, but now if we're in the Championship still, and it's unfortunate because you've got all of the emotional tie and the sentimentality of the fact you've got fans that have been there through thick and thin. You'll have fans that might not be able to afford to go next season and might have been watching Villa when we were in the 3rd tier in the early 70s. You probably got someone in there, I don't know, in their early 60s, late 50s who went down as a boy with their family or a girl who now maybe can't afford to go, and they've been there through 20 different situations of ups and downs. But if you look at what Chelsea have done in terms of the spend, and then you look at the revenue they brought in, something's got to change for Villa, because our revenue brought in is peanuts, really. And this is one of the things. And absolutely, we've got the Adidas kit deal, we've got the Batano sponsorship, all that's commercially better. The club shop, I'm sure, will help. I think the kits and the training kit that will be available with Adidas branding will probably bring a bit of cash in. But is it going to be enough? Is it going to be enough? It's not.
I've got the idea, Kev. I've got it. All right. So this is what we need to do, boys. We need to find the next big thing from somewhere in Asia, right? Preferably someone like maybe Indian or like Korean or Chinese, and then we need to, from finding that next big thing, like Tottenham did with Son, get all of the money in terms of interest. Because I went to Spurs twice, obviously twice in the last 2 years. And I've got nothing against it, but you go to Spurs, and honestly, it's like being in Koreatown. Like, there's so many people there just to see Son. There's so many. Every single one of them's got a Spurs shirt on. Every single one of them's got bags full of merch from their trip over. Like, there's something about entering that market. I think Man United did it with Park Ji-sung years ago, and they were just able to like generate. But like, there is something about like getting players from untapped markets where they're not super interested in football, but they like their own. And I think, and look, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's never going to happen, but that would really help. I think it would really help.
Well,
Sam, you're getting a lot of love today with your comment. You're on fire tonight, mate. You're on absolute fire.
I'm pretty sure Weston McKennie's American. That's a pretty big market.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty big market, America, isn't it?
I mean,
I don't know how highly they rate him.
I don't. Is he their equivalent of like? Because do you remember what was his name? Freddie Adu. He was like supposed to be the second coming of Pele.
Yeah.
At that point, the Americans were fully into him. I think you need a player that like the whole country is going to get behind and like. Yeah, well done. You need a player that a whole country and an untapped market is going to get. The problem is with America is the people who like football already like football, and they've got Messi there. So if they're spending their money on a shirt, it's probably not going to be a Weston McKennie Villa shirt. It might be a Messi shirt, but it's a tough one, and I hate the fact that we're so restricted. And look, have absolutely no impact on it, but it will be really interesting to see if Villa will actually start this legal action and where it will go and what, because the CMA, that the Competition Market Authority, that they'll lodge this action with, will have powers that supersede the Premier League's powers. So interesting to see.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think the difficulty is, and I know Michael's mentioned it. I know you've mentioned it a number of times, Kev, about where the ground is in Aston. Yes, we want to keep that tradition, but they need to make the area around the ground better, or they need to make the experience for people coming for the day to Aston Villa better. So whether that be, I know they're bringing these buses in, getting people from the city centre through to Birmingham, but whether it's an actual Aston Villa day tour, whatever, because the tourist fans, in quotes, go to Tottenham or go to Liverpool or go to Manchester or go to other London clubs, and they'll have a day or a weekend in that area, and the football is part of that experience. And then like they'll go and they'll have 2-3 hours before, like you said, Sam, they'll go to the club shop, then they'll have stuff afterwards. Whereas at Villa, it's like you go to the ground in Aston, and it's like, what else is there? I know they're trying to bring like the band and stuff to play beforehand, but it's in a car park. I know they've got the kids bit, and it's in like the old Stumps building. Like there's nothing there, like, and that's the problem.
This is one of the things that Blues are going to get with their new ground. It is, I mean, it's not right in the city centre, but it's eminently walkable. And you could see it, you'd stay in Digbeth at the weekend. It's kind of in between the city centre and there, and you've got a situation where you could have that kind of experience. I got a lot of love for Aston. My old man was born stone's throw from Villa Park. I went to school in Aston. Amazingly, the grammar school for those who've heard me speak, but yeah, I did. I fluked myself in there, and I've got a lot of love for the area, but you wouldn't want to be taking your family there for a weekend, really. You wouldn't. So the question is, how do you get people to the ground and from the ground? Unless you absolutely buy everything in between the city centre and Aston and develop it, which is not going to happen. I think this is always going to be a square that they can't circle. I don't know how they're going to do it. They've made it better.
Like you say, unless it's like a guided day trip weekend where they'll have people, you'll go into the city centre and then you'll get like chauffeured almost into to the ground 2 hours before kickoff. Then they've got the club shop there, which has been done out.
Public
then
transport's the issue,
playing.
Public transport, and I know it's not as simple as this, right? But there are 2 train routes that go right near Villa Park. Surely something could be done. I don't work for Network Rail or whoever it needs to be, West Midlands, trains, but you could put on a train every 5 minutes or something. I don't know. Do something.
The problem is with that, Kev, is that the Birmingham City Council went bust. So any plans they had in terms of like expanding infrastructure died. But I think the bigger problem is, even if you get a bus from the city centre to and from the game, I've started driving since I moved from London. I started driving to the games. I'm a bit out of the way, and you can't drive out of Villa Park until like maybe an hour after the game's finished. So if you go and you want to, like Richard said, go watch a game, take in a game of football, and then go back to the town and then spend that with your family, it's either that or you're sitting on a bus for an hour and a half, stuck in Aston with it doesn't make for like a very nice atmosphere. And I think that's why they're trying to build. That's why they're trying to build around the stadium, like put bars in there, family-friendly stuff, kids-friendly stuff. Because then, people can't filter out straight away, but at least we'll give them stuff to do. But the reality is, you want to go see a football game, then you want to kind of bugger off a little bit, don't you? You want to go home, you want to, or especially if you're a tourist or a visitor, you want to go and see the sights and maybe grab dinner or go back to your hotel or whatever it is. I think Michael asked an interesting question before. He said, is our love of Villa Park going to hold us back? And I think whether it is or it isn't doesn't really matter, because Chris Eck came out and said a few weeks ago, we're not going anywhere. We're not leaving Villa Park. So I think we need to, well, not we don't need to do anything, but the club needs to do the plan as to how they're going to do that, because right now we don't have enough people in the stadium. We should, obviously we need a bigger stadium, but the problem is and we'll see this with Birmingham City when they get their stadium. If we had a 60, 70,000 seater stadium, would we fill it? And I honestly think the answer is no. I don't think we would on a regular basis. I don't think when Luton come to town, you're getting 70,000 Villa fans in there, because we're just...
Well, Man City find it hard enough, and they've, 48?
We're just not... There's not as many people in Birmingham as there are in London, so you don't have as many locals, as many fans, around. So I don't know. I think it's one of those where, this is why I say you can't generate we cannot generate the kind of revenue that Spurs and Arsenal and Man United can. So there's no way to do it. And that was what I was trying to say earlier. You can't compete with them in terms of matchday revenue, no matter what you do. So interesting one. I don't know what the answer is.
Well, Kev, finish up in a sec, but we've definitely got the right manager to get the best out of the players that we have, whoever comes in. And yeah, that's the challenge, to keep us in those areas where we are in the top 6, 5, 4, 3, maybe even winning the league, because then we will be able to attract the best players and make the improvements on the ground that we need to do. Someone's
got to win the league, haven't they? Why can't it be us? Someone's got to win it. We've absolutely got the right man, haven't we? Unai's at the wheel with Monchi on the roof, and the rest of the crew in the back seat. So I look at it and think this season will be defined by obviously how well we do in the transfer market and how well we keep our squad fit. It would have been so interesting to see what would have happened last season if Mings, Buendia, Kamara, Ramsey, etc. had been fit for majority of the season. If we can bolster the team in the areas where we're light, good replacement for Duran, right back, another centre half, decent quality midfield addition to add to Barkley and McKennie, then it's exciting times for Aston Villa. Exciting times, but I don't think these questions are going to go anywhere soon. The FFP thing is going to rumble on. I think the infrastructure challenge and the questions, and naming rights for the stadium. I would do it all day long. I'd call it the OnlyFans Stadium or the Wonderbra Stadium or the whatever. My point there
definitely got OnlyFans on the mind tonight, Kev.
No, I'm making a point there. Like I wouldn't even care if it's the most lurid link. If it's cash, that means we can get a good striker in, then get a good striker. I'd rather it be the Cadbury Stadium or another Birmingham HP Saw Stadium, whatever. But if we want to compete at the top end, there's things we're going to have to do that might not feel palatable to some diehard fans in an ideal world, but you got to play the game, haven't you? And Sam, I expect you to be on some Korean football channels for the next few weeks, looking for the next bright Korean college football. I want you to report back on the top stars if you can. Maybe you'll make a bit of a fee on it as an agent.
I'm working on it. I've got one Korean word down. What is it? They say "안녕하세요," means hello. So
that's a good start.
That's a good start.
I think I'm actually I'm fully with Kev. All this being said, and my frustration around PSR and sustainability. Obviously, I don't want to see players like Dougie go if we don't really want them to go. But I still actually I think we'll be okay. As long as Emery's there, he's just signed a 5-year deal. I wonder how much that deal chipped into the PSR, how much it drained our budget. God knows what we've given him, but he's worth every penny. And I actually am still very positive about the upcoming season, and I'm positive about our transfers as well. Getting players back. I think it's worth noting that Kamara is probably not going to be out until. I'm not sure about that one. Seems a bit racially motivated to me, but we'll move on. No, but I think obviously
he
with
definitely
Kamara,
talks out of it.
Yeah. I think with Kamara's being injured and stuff, we still need a more holding midfielder, unless we're going to play Tim until when is he back? October, November?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of summer left. We'll be all right.
Yeah. Nice one, boys. What a night! What a chat! Great chat. Everyone in the chat as well. Amazing. We've got over 400 people watching, which is just crazy stuff. Thank you, everyone, for your support.
Thanks, everyone.
Just before we go, I do need to just shout out our show supporters. Football prizes. So they've got a competition at the moment to win a Leon Bailey signed shirt. So make sure you visit footballprizes.co.uk. Get your ticket to be in the draw. The closing date is the 20th of June, so you've got a bit of time. And there's also instant prizes as well on there. So once you buy your ticket, you're in the draw to win the Leon Bailey prize. But then there's also a chance of 14 instant win prizes, and 2 of those prizes are an Ollie Watkins signed shirt and a Moussa Diaby signed shirt. So A great chance of winning there, people. So make sure you visit footballprizes.co.uk and click on the Leon Bailey prize to get your ticket. Guys, what a show. As I said before, thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you smash that like button if you haven't already, and hit that subscribe button if you are new to the channel. We'll be back with plenty more shows. I have got the interview with Tom Colomosi coming up, which will be a great one because obviously all the news that's coming through about the transfers. So make sure you look out for that one. I also will be talking to Juventus channel very soon as well. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that one. More transfer talk shows as well, more fans forums. So make sure you stick with the channel. Thank you everyone for watching. And as always, remember, we'll follow the Villa.